artificial gravity, but I think, hundreds, if not 1,000 years from now, we're going to have to, it's going to be more 2001 like. Yes, young man.
How hard was it to adjust to the zero gravity of the space station?
So I adjust to zero gravity easier than I adjust to gravity. Some people are the opposite. I mean, a lot of people get sick in space for the first, few days or sometimes a week or so. But I definitely felt a lot worse coming back than I did going to space. But even after a year, I never felt completely normal. You have this fluid shift in your body that never quite goes away completely, so your head always feels stuffy, and the CO2 on the space station gets high sometimes, and it would burn my eyes and give me headaches, and so for me, the adjustment back to Earth is much harder than the adjustment to space. Now, because everything's floating, it definitely takes a long time to figure that out, and it's funny to see a new person that's never been to space before come into the space station. And I was fortunate enough that I had two guys come up there and spent 6 months. So I saw them arrive and I saw them leave, and it was like seeing these baby birds show up for the first time. And when they left, they were like soaring like eagles. And it was really special. Two great guys. Yes, sir.
I have two questions, actually. The first one is, what was like your lowest point? Was there ever a point where you just thought like, this isn't worth it, I want to go home? And would you ever do it again?
Good question. So, my lowest point in space was definitely on my previous flight when my sister-in-law was shot. On this flight, however, I was one Friday night, we're down in the Russian segment of the space station having dinner, and for some reason the ground didn't call us down there, and one of my American colleagues floats back to the U.S. side, and they're like, hey, the ground's trying to get in touch with you because you got some kind of family emergency. So I go down there to the U.S. segment to call the ground and see what's going on, and then we were out of comm for 20 minutes. So I'm sitting there thinking, family emergency, my last family emergency, my sister-in-law, Gabby, was shot, and I get on the phone. Eventually, after 20 minutes, I call the ground, and I say, hey, what's going on? And they're like, hey, your daughter needs you to call her right away. So I call my older daughter, Samantha. She's at my brother's house in Tucson because her cousin was graduating from high school. And she tells me, she says, she's there. Claudia, Claire had left. Uncle Mark and Aunt Gabby went out of town, and she was lonely. This was the emergency. I'm in space for a year, and she has a loneliness emergency. And the second part of your question, though, is would I do it again? I would do it again, but I wouldn't do it a second time. So having not done it, absolutely I would do it again. If someone said right now, you want to fly in space for a year? I'd say, let someone else.
That's a fascinating talk, thank you. Because of time dilation, are you now truly younger than your brother? Joking aside, though, but all the testing that's gone through, medically speaking, on your body, etc., what are the differences, if any, that they discovered between you and your brother?
So general relativity, no longer a theory, says if you, the faster you travel, Einstein's general relativity, the faster you travel, time slows down. So because I went 17,500 miles an hour for 520 days, and my brother only did that for 50 days, people have done the math. And I used to be 6 minutes younger than him. Now I'm 6 minutes and 5 milliseconds younger than him. But, because I've spent a lot of time in space, in this radiation environment, this harsh environment, some of the studies that they did with my brother and I, and this was just, kind of just a serendipitous thing that we had these two identical twins after I had gotten assigned, and they wanted to do some genetic-based research. The theory is, there's these things in our genetics, in our DNA called telomeres, and the longer they are, the physically younger you are, and the shorter they are, the older you are. So the theory is, because of all the radiation I got, my telomeres are going to be shorter than his, and I'll be physically older. So, you know, when we're like 60 years old, if I look like I'm like 75 and, you know, he looks like he's 60, we're gonna maybe know what happened. My brother got Botox, and he's probably. But the way science works is you have the hypothesis, there's the experiment, you collect the data, you analyze the data, you write the reports, it's peer reviewed and published. We're still in that process, and I didn't lose much more bone mass than I did on my 6-month flight, which is good. I didn't lose as much muscle mass. I definitely felt a lot worse. The effects on my eyes were similar. The structural changes you have in your vision, which interestingly enough, has not happened to any women. So, and we're concerned about this because you don't want people going to Mars and you know, having blind spots or not being able to see. So maybe, you know, the first crew to Mars will be a crew of just women. It's possible. I think that'd be great. As long as it's not my 2 daughters.
So after returning from such an amazing adventure, what psychological things have you felt since you've gone back? Has there been any negative backlash from returning to Earth, or has it all been positive?
You know, working, like I said, you know, doing something that's really, really hard, really challenging is very, very rewarding. And, you know, and finding, you know, that next really challenging thing for me is going to be very important. And I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to spread the message. The message about Earth and, you know, international cooperation, how important that is in space. You know, it's one of the great things about the space station. So, you know, I would say, you know, one of the, you know, negative effects is the fact that, you know, having that really complicated technical thing to do that I don't have now. Actually going to Dubai on Friday to work with the United Nations on some space-related issues that I'm excited about. The other negative effect is that you spend all these time with these people that you really grow to love, I mean, dearly. You're friends for life, and then you come back from space, and they come back from space, and you don't really see them much anymore. And, you know, it's really sad to lose that sense of, you know, common purpose and camaraderie that I had for so long with these people. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your schedule. You said it was so to the minute. And also, specifically, what was your exercise schedule? What kind of physical activity did you have to do?
So I would generally wake up about 45 minutes before I had something to do in the morning, which is kind of what I do here on Earth. It was very similar. I didn't always wake up at the time I was supposed to. I would usually sleep in a little bit. It's interesting, we operate on Greenwich Mean Time. So I generally get up about 6:45 GMT. You wonder why we're using GMT, and it's not because it's the normal like Earth standard of time. It's actually because, you know, we have all these control centers around the world, and you know, in Japan and Europe and the United States and Houston and Huntsville and in Moscow. And using GMT is the most convenient time for the folks in Moscow because they take public transportation to work, and that's the only way that guys in the control center can get there. So the time we use on the space station is based on the Moscow metro schedule. So, you know, I would wake up about 45 minutes before I would have to do something, you know, have breakfast. We would have a conference in the morning with the ground and talk about the plan of the day. And then you'd spend about, I'd say 30% of your time doing science, 30% of your time doing general, like, upkeep of the space station, 30% of your time fixing things. Some of these activities are 5 minutes long. It's like, go turn the switch on. And some of them are 10 hours, like doing a space walk, for example. And we would exercise a lot, 2 hours a day. We had a treadmill that you're bungee to, a stationary bicycle, and a weightlifting machine. And you would do one aerobic and the resistive exercise you do every day, 6 days a week. And then you'd work until about 2 hours before it was time to go to bed. And then you had about 2 hours of free time. That was basically 6 days a week for a whole year. No vacation, no walking in the backyard or anything. Did you have a second part of that question? Oh, the exercise one. Yeah. Okay. And the Russians, yeah, they have some of the similar exercise equipment, but we also share when ours breaks, we might use theirs and vice versa. How about ones?
This might be a little bit out there, but based on what you said about humans in space evolving to no longer have skeletons, how do you think that octopuses would do in space? And also, how's your day? How do you think an octopus would handle space? Because they lack
Octopus.
skeletal system.
How would an octopus do?
Based on what you said about living in space, potentially evolving to no longer have a skeletal system, how do you think an octopus would do in space? And also, how's your day going?
Yeah. We'd have to fill the space station up with water, right?
You probably only need a tank, but
Yeah.
you need to find a way to secure it properly
Yeah.
because they're known to escape.
You can put a helmet on its head, fill it with
A
water.
little hamster ball.
Yeah. You know, definitely all the legs would come in handy because you're doing stuff. I mean, you can't just let it float away. You're putting things in your pockets. You're taping them to the wall. So having 6 more legs.
Anchoring themselves like the suckers.
Yeah, and the suckers. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had mice when I was up there, and they mice. We had a bunch of rodents that we did research on. Some of them had some drugs, and others didn't, and then we dismantled their little mice parts and sent them home. And they're mice. But it was interesting to watch them because they kind of act just a lot like we do in space. At first, they look sick. And then as they're there longer and longer, they look like they're feeling much better. And, first they're like hanging on, they're like scared, hanging on inside the cage. And then after a few weeks, they're running around. And, looks like they're having a good old time. Sir.
Scott, what about your bones? Now, I would presume that you did develop osteoporosis, right? You lost bone mass. So what was your T-score? And now I presume you're back to normal. You don't have the hunch.
Yeah.
Did you take medicine beforehand? If so, what medicine? And, what was the effect on your bones?
So, and on my 6-month flight, I lost in some areas like my hips, my heels, like 1% of the mass. And on this flight, it was about the same, surprisingly. It didn't it was even more than twice as long, but didn't double. But there's another theory here, though, that not only do we lose bone mass, but some of our other bone mass is restructured and is not as strong. We've had a couple astronauts after long duration flights break their hips. And if you're like over 50 and you break your hip, you have something like a 30% chance of dying from it. So it's pretty serious. And so there is this after they came back. Yeah, so there is this theory that, it's not just bone loss that's important, but it's also keeping the strength of the bone that the remaining bone is also something we're investigating. On my first flight, I took this medication. It's called like bisphosphonates. I took that, and it didn't sit well with me at all. So, but I didn't take it for long. Yeah, but some people do take that as a preventative measure for bone loss, and I think that's something that's a drug that we can take on Earth.
Does it work? Have they proven that?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
What do you think about aliens?
What do I think about aliens? I'll tell you what. So I think, considering all the stars out there, and this Kepler planet finder has figured out that a lot of these stars could have planets like our planet Earth that could support life in that kind of zone. So I think it's probably very unlikely that we don't have life out there in the universe, considering the numbers. Now, when people say aliens, they usually think, Roswell, New Mexico, and, aliens that visited the Earth. And I'm just kind of suspicious about that because I wonder why they stopped visiting as soon as everyone had a camera and a video camera in their pocket. All these people that were getting abducted all the time, as soon as we got the iPhone, those aliens stopped coming. Otherwise, we'd have all these pictures of them. So yeah, I don't believe they visited the Earth. And if they did, they would definitely not go to, no offense to people from Roswell, New Mexico, but that is not the most beautiful place that I